well, what's this? And whose head do you see on it? Might not have used so many of these lately, but they are something that was around when Jesus was talking, and still pretty similar now. Cold, hard currency, one of the things that hasn't changed all that much in 2,000 years. When Jesus was asked about paying taxes, we see in this passage that he did that good old politician trick of answering a question with a question. He asked the questioner about the face stamped on the coins. Emperors putting their faces on coins was actually, in Jesus' day, a fairly recent innovation. Julius Caesar was the first to do that, about 80 years before this conversation would have taken place. In a vast empire with no form of mass communication, Caesar found a way to assert his authority everywhere, all at once, all over his empire. For thousands of years before that, rulers, and still in that day, rulers had been building statues of themselves to place in all of the cities of their empire. And those statues, in the image of the emperor or the king, gave the subjects this message: you may never see me in person, but don't ever forget that I am the one who is in charge. And then every now and then they'd send their army through to drive that message home. When subjects looked at the statue, the emperor's image, they would be reminded of who is in charge. Julius Caesar had a gift for ruling, a gift for dictatorship. He found something to put his image on that would be seen by everyone, everywhere. Not just a statue that would be seen by those in the city square, but his image in every home, in every market stall, in every financial transaction. His subjects saw his image and were reminded of who is in charge. Before Julius Caesar, coins usually had the heads of gods on them. So that's the level of audacity of this man, that he put himself in the place of a god on Roman coinage. And the emperors who followed Julius used the same technique. And at the time that Jesus held up a coin, it would have been the face of Tiberius that everyone would have seen. Jesus is in Jerusalem now, and people are gathering around, asking him questions, trying to catch him out. And this question, I'm guessing the questioner probably took a while to come up with it. What's the toughest, hardest question we could possibly ask him, one that he cannot wriggle out of, the one that's bound to get him into trouble? There really did seem no way around this question. Teacher, we know you are sincere and show deference to no one, and you do not regard people with partiality, but teach the way of God in accordance with truth. Is it lawful to pay taxes to the emperor or not? By the way, isn't it just icky and squirmy when people talk to you like that? When people use flattery to put you off your guard, to get the better of you. Let's face it, we do need a bit of positive feedback every now and then, and a good compliment can be a wonderful thing, but flattery is a weapon. Here we see it being used as a really pretty little dagger, designed to hurt. And the only defence against flattery is good, honest humility. But Jesus wasn't taken in by the flattery for a moment. He knew that they were there to make him say something that would get him in trouble. And he could see that whichever way he went on this question, he would be in trouble with someone. Possibly his life would be in danger. Is it lawful to pay taxes to the emperor or not? Well, you know the political situation at this time. The Jews were under the heel of Rome. Their allegiance was to God, but the emperor had no respect for their God or for them. Throughout Judea and Galilee, families were losing their ancestral land because they could not afford the exorbitant taxes that Rome was charging. People who did have money were buying up those properties, so the rich were getting richer and the poor were becoming destitute, homeless, and starving. Not only that, but the Romans outsourced tax collection. Locals were contracted to collect taxes, and they created a bit of income for themselves by charging a little extra on top. And the Romans didn't care how much these people charged as long as they got their cut. The Romans really didn't care that their taxation system invited corruption and broke down trust in communities. In this environment, how can you answer the question, is it lawful to pay taxes to the emperor or not? If Jesus says yes, then all of these destitute people who have placed their faith in him are going to turn on him, possibly violently. On the other hand, if he says no, it's not lawful, then there almost certainly in Jerusalem at that time would have been a few soldiers standing around with big muscles and sharp swords who would be happy to arrest Jesus for treason. There was no way out of this trap, or so it seemed. But Jesus was clever. He took a coin and said, well, whose head's on it? And they said, the emperor. So, give to the emperor the things that are the emperor's. The emperor had asserted his ownership over the empire's currency by putting his image on it. Okay then, let him have it. Let him have what's his. This is a call for Christians to let go of our rights, to let go of what seems necessary for our salvation. What seems necessary for our survival. To let the emperor, just let the emperor have it. Now, some people see this verse as a call for Christians to be obedient to civil authority. It is far from that. It is an assertion of Christian freedom. It is a call to empty our hands of the things that would control us, all the things that want to control us, to live simple, humble lives so that we cannot be controlled by any would-be emperor. Now, in our context, of course, that doesn't just mean the Queen, and it doesn't primarily mean the Queen, whose head is on our coins. It means letting go of our need for security, for health, for respect, or rather it means trusting God for all of those things. And when we do that, we really are free. We can't be controlled by bribery or by flattery or by threats. Remember that when Jesus said these things, he was within a week of dying at the hands of that emperor, or his representative anyway. The empire asserted its right to take his life, and he said, okay, you can have it. He gave to the emperor what the emperor demanded. And when he did this, he wasn't just asserting his own freedom. He was setting us all free from all sorts of tyranny. Now, this is profound, but it's not the most profound part of Jesus' answer. The next bit is even more important. Give to the emperor the things that are the emperor's, and to God the things that are God's. This coin was made in the image of the Queen, with her image on it. Where do we find God's image? Well, God doesn't need coins. God doesn't need statues. Human beings are God's image. you and me. If I'm to give God the things that are God's, I will give God myself, everything I am. And not only that, but every other human being is the image of God. So I will not use other humans to serve my own interests. I will not use them to further my own agendas. I will give them to God. I won't try to keep them for myself. Now, understanding this has changed the world many times. The slave trade was abolished in the British Empire when enough Christian members of Parliament really understood that black people are made in God's image just as much as white people. Recognising that women are made in God's image just as much as men has promoted the cause of gender equity. This is an incredibly practical doctrine. It changes the world in big ways and in little ways. In my own life, when I am in conflict with another person and am tempted to think of them as lesser or as other, I'm reminded that they are the image of God just as much as I am. And so these two parts of this morning's reading from Mark are more connected than we might have thought. If we are to give God's image to God by giving ourselves to God, then we are obeying the first commandment. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. This is what it looks like to give God that which belongs to God. And when we recognise that every other human being belongs to God, then we will obey the second most important commandment. You shall love your neighbour as yourself. With the COP26 summit beginning today in Glasgow, I was reminded of words from Gus Smith, the founder of the World Resource Institute. This is what he said. I used to think that the top environmental problems were biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse, and climate change. I thought that 30 years of good science could address those problems. I was wrong. The top environmental problems are selfishness, greed, and apathy. And to deal with these, we need a cultural and spiritual transformation. We scientists don't know how to do that. So that was his assessment. And scientists are not trained in spiritual transformation, and politicians, well, they're not so great at it either, to put it mildly. But followers of Jesus are. We do know how to do what is needed. We meet selfishness, greed, and apathy with love. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind. Love your neighbour as yourself. This means loving the planet that is the work of God's hands. It means loving our Pacific neighbours who are losing their homes. It means loving our farmers by supporting their efforts in sustainable agriculture, even at those times when it does mean that we pay a little bit more for our food. It means loving people in the fossil fuel industries by supporting alternative industries for them to move into. It means loving our children by acting now to give them a future. Jesus said that love was the summation of the whole Jewish law. In the increasing complexity of our lives, in our time, love must continue to be the law that governs all our decisions. Whatever happens at Glasgow, we know what our path is. The same path as always, the path that Jesus walked. It's the path of love. Amen.